You are listening to the Prosper Law Podcast. Learn how to reduce stress, have more time, and make more money. Come on in.
I'm Greg McCollum, and I built a 7-figure criminal defense law firm. I formed Prosper Law to show criminal defense law firm owners who are desperate for success how to grow from under $200,000 to $1 million and beyond. Hi, Greg McCollum here again with another edition of the Prosper at Law podcast. I'm here today to talk to you about starting a law firm. If you're thinking about starting a law firm or if you just started a law firm, then there are certain things that you need to know and I think would be helpful. And I can also draw on my experience when I started my law firm, which was in 1993, which was a different landscape then in terms of marketing mostly and networking. It was very different. So I was asked recently, about starting a law firm and what do you need to start a law firm? And it got me thinking back of what you need. The good news is really you don't need much. You don't need much at all in terms of starting. And you've got a law license. You're licensed to do business. You don't have to go out and get inventory. You don't need a warehouse. You just need a space. And in today's world, you can start a law firm without even having a space. You can start a law firm, have a website and a phone number, and answer calls and have an answering service, and tell some people that you're in practice and you're in business. It's not complicated. Now, there are other things that I think are important at the very beginning. And one of those things is choosing the name of your law firm. Because if you go ahead and pick the right name now, then you don't have to worry about changing it later. That's something I did when I first started practicing. I'd been at the DA's office. I worked for a judge, and I worked as a public defender for a short time, and then I worked in the DA's office for about 5 years. And so I knew a lot of people, and so when I went out and opened my office, I just rented a professional space. I think my rent at that time, I picked the nicest building in Myrtle Beach where I lived. It was called the Founder Center, and it was 4 floors. It was a curved building. It had this nice drive-up parking lot, nice elevators. The office was really nice. And so it's funny though too, because that was right. That was a good move, moving in there. Now, the reason I moved in there was because of the price. It was $450. They provided a receptionist. They had a fax machine, and the receptionist would do light typing because that's what you did back then. You typed. And so it had everything I need. Now, it was kind of just dumb luck that I went in there, because if there had been something else, some other kind of like professional office spaces where you just have an office and then it looks like a bigger office because it had maybe 10 or 20 offices in there, and everybody had their own little office, but then they had a conference room. So, these things give the appearance of a larger business, because when people walk in there, they're not really thinking that you just have one little office in there. The place looks nice. It looks like a serious business. But I didn't really go through that thought process at all. Now, looking back at it, after I was in there less than 2 years, I bought a building. It was a 1,400 square foot house, which was kind of a dump, and it wasn't in the best neighborhood, even though it was only about 10 blocks from there, but it was a drastic change in terms of the neighborhood. And I had my own reasons for buying the house, but if I was going to go back and do it over, I would not have done that. I would have stayed in the Founder Center. And at that time, the offices in there, like a real office where you had your own suite, where if you had an employee or two, you had space. Back then, the rent was, I think, $1,500 or $1,750. And I thought that, my God, that's outrageous. Looking back at it, that would have been a good investment. Now, getting back to the name, when I started, because this is what everybody did, nobody called themselves anything. Nobody had a brand. I can't think of one lawyer in South Carolina at the time that didn't just have the name or the name of the partners. So that wasn't something that I even conceived of. Now, after I'd been practicing about 10 years, this guy came into town and he opened a law firm, and he did not use his name. And he was a successful advertiser and marketer. But back when I did it, what do I do? Well, it's so stupid because I didn't even just call myself Greg McCollum. I called myself M. Gregory McCollum, attorney at law, which is really kind of embarrassing because I'd wanted to be a lawyer from a very early age. And I read F. Lee Bailey's books. You know, he wrote some books like The Defense Never Rests and stuff. And F. Lee Bailey, he was a brilliant marketer. And he was on those TV shows, those game shows. And everybody to this day, maybe not younger people, knows who he is. So because he was F. Lee Bailey, I was going to be M. Gregory McCollum. And a good friend of mine who's a lawyer, he kind of said something about it in an offhand way, and he was right. Now, since then, I'm Greg McCollum. Whatever I do, I'm Greg McCollum. I'm not all those syllables. So anyway, I go out. I'm M. Gregory McCollum, attorney at law, and I moved my office out of the Wright building, okay, into the bad building. Big mistake. So if you're going to start a law firm, this is the number one recommendation I'd give you. Don't just use your name. Don't call, and there's some states, and I don't know which ones, but you can check with your bar association. Some states don't allow it. I think more states are allowing it. But if they won't allow it, then, and it has to have your name in the title, then you just have to live with that, I guess. Okay. But maybe you could put something else in the title. Like you say, your name's Jim Henson. Maybe you could be Jim Henson Criminal Defense, or maybe you could incorporate as, Jim Henson Family Law or something like that. But if you can use a name, like the name of my law firm is Complete Legal Defense Team. And there's several things about that I like, and a lot of that was intentional. But I had been practicing, I started practicing in 93. I didn't change the name until 2013. So however many years that is. And then I started rebranding it, and I put Greg McCollum in the title originally, and it still shows up some just because the internet had been invented and Google searches were there. And so at that point, it didn't make sense for me to take my name 100% out of it. But the idea is just Complete Legal Defense Team, because you're not hiring Greg McCollum, you're hiring our team. And we have a team of lawyers and paralegals and legal assistants. And that's the idea, is would you rather have a team or would you rather have one lawyer? Nothing wrong with having one lawyer, but what's the saying? Two heads are better than one. And so a team is better, and we collaborate in the way we defend people. So if you're going to start a law firm, think about the name. Think about the brand. And you're not going to do this in 5 minutes. And then also, and this makes it more difficult, you also, ideally, in my opinion, you want to have a .com, okay? So even though when you search my law firm, it's, criminallawyermyrtlebeach.com. Because at the time that I created that, having what you did in the URL was important. Apparently it's less important now, but so that also I've got CompleteLegalDefenseTeam.com. And if you do a search for Complete Legal Defense Team, you end up at criminallawyermyrtlebeach.com. And sometimes people notice that, sometimes they don't even notice it. So you want that if you can get it. The other thing is, when you're thinking about the name, when you're thinking about the brand, think about what you do. Think about the kind of clients that you want to attract. When I left the DA's office, all I wanted to do was criminal defense. But because I accepted the conventional wisdom, which is apparently incorrect, because I proved that's not true, you can't make any money in criminal law. that was the mantra. That's what everybody said. There's no money in criminal law. So what do? There must be money in personal injury, so I'll do that. And then I thought I didn't want to do family law. I didn't want to do divorce. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do criminal defense, personal injury, and workers' compensation. I did one or two workers' compensation cases. Those were disasters for me. I didn't know what I was doing. I made some mistakes. I missed some deadlines. And I actually got the best workers' comp lawyer, one of the best ones in the state. He took pity on me and bailed me out. And lesson learned there, I was no longer a workers' compensation lawyer. Now, I did personal injury for some period of time. And, I settled some cases. I tried some cases. But it's a necessary practice for people. I mean, certainly we need personal injury lawyers. But I just didn't like it. I like criminal law. I like going to court. I like being in court. I like being in trial all the time. I like negotiating pleas. I didn't like sitting in the office going through pleadings and litigation and requests to admit and all the discovery. It was just a grind for me. I didn't like it. Now, if I did it again, I would do it differently because I would get help. I would get somebody that does like that to help me with it. So, interestingly, in terms of what you need, one, you need the name, but you need to think about who you want to be and where you want to be. I know a lawyer who she was family law in New Jersey, and when she opened her law firm, she looked up because she wanted to be a high-end family lawyer. She wanted to be a high-end divorce lawyer, and she actually had a kind of a subspecialty of helping. I think it was something to do with children, child neglect or something. I can't remember, which was just a very small percentage of the market, but she chose that. The other thing she did is she moved her law firm to I think it's the richest zip code in New Jersey. So she moved to that town. I don't know how far away it was. She went there because that was the richest zip code. In other words, it's like going from a poor county or a poor area out in Los Angeles, and so no, I'm going to be in Beverly Hills. That's what she did, and it worked for her. So decide what you want to do, who you want to help, how you want to spend your life, and focus on that. Now, if somebody says, well, I'm going to go into this practice area because there's more money in it, ultimately you're not going to be happy. A good friend of mine whose passion is criminal defense owns a very successful family law firm. She's successful. But what she really likes is criminal defense, and she's done some of that through appointments and stuff. She loves it so much she does it just practically for free. So do what you love. If you're starting a law firm and you don't want to go to court, you don't want to have jury trials, then don't start a litigation firm. Start a transactional firm. Okay, do something that's non-court. Because being in court all the time affects your life in a lot of ways in terms of as being a time suck. And I see lawyers that are in court that are miserable. I've seen people that worked in the DA's office with me, and seen people in the public defender's offices, and they don't want to be trial lawyers. They just got a job there, and they've largely been miserable. So if you don't want to be a trial lawyer, court lawyer, litigation lawyer, do something else. Most practices don't involve court appearances, so pick what you like to do. Think about what the name of your firm is going to be. Now, the other thing is, in terms of marketing, I really, because I started with a mindset of scarcity, and I didn't even know what that was back then, my whole idea of making money was saving money. In other words, I'm going to try to do everything like the cheapest way possible. as just a fluke, I moved into the nicest office building in Myrtle Beach, but I did that because it was cheaper. And I had there was nothing intentional about that. And when you do something, when you're doing something right and you don't understand it, that's called, you're an unconscious competent. So I was on some levels there, I was an unconscious competent. In terms of marketing, I knew I wanted to have a listing in the Yellow Pages back then, and you had to put your order in like in October, and the book came out in March, and if you missed it, you weren't in the phone book for another year, which is a disaster, because back then, if you're not in the phone book, nobody can find you. So I had to be in the phone book, but I wasn't going to buy an ad. I was just going to, you could make your name bold. So you can if you paid a little bit of money, they'd make your name a little bit bigger so it would stand out on the page. So I did that. I think it was, I don't know, extra $100 a month or something like that. And so I did that. I thought about, who do I know? Who should I tell that I'm opening this law firm? And because I had, in the DA's office, I'd worked for certain police departments. At one point, I got all of the cases from the Myrtle Beach Police Department. I was their prosecutor. Every criminal case made, they had to come to Greg. And so I tried their cases. I worked on their cases. I got to know them. So I knew most of the police department. I also knew some people from other departments like North Myrtle Beach and Surfside and some other places. And so then I thought about every lawyer that I knew and other people around the courthouse. And so I just sat down with a legal pad and I wrote down everybody I could think of. And it was 440 names. And I did spend a little money, and I ordered some Rolodex cards because back then, people had Rolodexes. And if you don't know what a Rolodex is, you can Google it. Nobody has them anymore. But back then, that's how you looked up people. And instead of having to, and if they were from another town, you had to have their Rolodex card because you didn't have the out-of-town phone book. It was a different world. So I sent out 440 letters saying, hey, proud to announce I'm opening my law firm. I'm going to do criminal defense, personal injury, and workers' comp. And then I was counting on those referrals. And I got some referrals. And I did okay. That first year, I think I was making just under $40,000 because I had this job as the DUI prosecutor, which was not a full-time job. It was just, I only just had to go to court, and we had court. So that only took up about maybe a third or maybe 30% of my time or something like that. And so, and I told people, and I was just letting people know. And the phone rang a little bit, and I did some cases. Now, I think my overhead that year for the entire year, I think it was $12,000. And with my part-time job and the fees I brought in, I think I made about $120,000. And so, if you spend $12,000 and you make $120,000, that's a great profit margin. Now that didn't last as I grew. That changed drastically. But at that time, that's what it was. Now, interestingly, I got the bright idea after I moved my office of buying. You could buy a full page ad in the Yellow Pages then, but I was too cheap to buy a full page, and a half a page didn't look that good. So I bought a 3/4 page, and I put the stuff in there, former prosecutor, court experience, call me, this kind of thing. And what happened is when that phone book came out, because I was fairly close to the front, I guess, you had to go through 3 or 4 pages. But all those pages were personal injury lawyers, so when you got to that page, criminal defense. So my phone blew up. And it's so interesting about this because at the time, I didn't understand the 6 parts of a business. And I didn't understand that the way you grow is that you have marketing, you have sales, you have people, you have your factory processes, how you do things, you have your physical space, you have your accounting numbers, and that sort of thing. So from going from basically really no marketing to some marketing, what's that going to do? The marketing, if it's successful, is going to break sales because there's too many people calling. You don't have enough support. It's not enough time in the day. You don't have time to talk to all these people. The other thing is you don't have time to weed them out because, let's say your conversion rate is 30, 40%. That means you got to talk to 10 people to get 4. So I didn't understand that. I didn't know anything about it. Had I known what I was doing at that time, my practice would have grown twice as fast. And so you need to market, but you also need to understand that when you get overwhelmed, you just solve that problem. And when you solve that problem, for instance, marketing breaks sales, you fix sales and it breaks people in terms of now you don't have enough people. And then if you get some more people, now your factory's deficient. And so think of it just going around like a clock or a wheel. One thing breaks the next. So when something breaks, that's a good sign. That means you're doing something right. So don't do what I did and turn off the marketing, because I think I just got rid of the I can't remember. I think I maybe hired a receptionist that I didn't have. I had a legal assistant. I had to get a receptionist, but I didn't have a system because she just put everybody through to me. So I ended up wasting my whole day talking to people that weren't going to hire me. But I could have fixed that if I'd have known something, if I'd just known how to do it, which I didn't. So if you're thinking about starting a law firm, good for you. Good luck. One piece of advice I'd give to you is be careful who you ask for help. Just be careful who you ask for help, because people will tell you the truth. They'll tell you their truth. 90% of it will be wrong, and it'll lead you in the wrong direction. I hope this was helpful. See you next time. If you have any questions, you can go to prosperatlaw.com. We help criminal defense lawyers reduce stress, make more money, and have more free time. Thanks for listening.
If you want to know more, go to prosperatlaw.com. We show criminal defense law firm owners how to reduce stress, have more free time, and make more money. Thanks for listening.